On March 19th, 2024, GreenPeace USA released a critical report on Bitcoin mining, arguing that the industry is closely linked with the fossil fuel sector and other polluting industries. We underline that GreenPeace USA's opinion may differ from GreenPeace International, as those organizations may act independently. In essence, they aim to demonstrate that Bitcoin mining is an energy-hungry technology that has caused substantial environmental and social damage. Moreover, this report is a follow-up of a two-part series. The first one is centered around proving that the Bitcoin mining industry is an environmental disaster. To sum up GreenPeace USA's opinion, Bitcoin consumes a tremendous amount of energy, pollutes, and represents an ecological disaster with no utility. Okay, let's change up the narrative that will demonstrate that yes, Bitcoin is energy hungry. However, it represents a unique and incredible opportunity for pollution cleanup. First off, yes, Bitcoin is an energy-hungry asset, and that's good news. We will get into this just after. Also, be careful not to confuse consumption with pollution. Secondly, Bitcoin is a must-have green asset, and you need it in your ESG portfolio. Finally, Bitcoin is 100% useful for energy transition. To address the assertion that Bitcoin would only be useful for criminal activities, there will be another video coming soon on this channel. For today, we'll debunk the most significant misconceptions about GreenPeace and, more importantly, provide you with solid insights to fully comprehend Bitcoin's strengths. Our objective is not to trash GreenPeace USA, since they're an NGO that has done great work in various areas in which I'm certainly not a specialist, but I would rather initiate a constructive debate about the ideas surrounding Bitcoin and their very important implications. First things first, let's look at the future of energy transition. Secondly, we'll get into the evolution of the international monetary system. Before we dive in, I would like to thank Daniel Batten for all his work on his X account because we used it a lot in the creation of this video. I am Roger Detente, living in Switzerland, and my companies operate Bitcoin mining plants and Bitcoin mining machines in the US and all over the world. To make a long story short, Bitcoin mining is about securitization of the Bitcoin network, auditing transactions, and new Bitcoin's issuance. In the traditional banking system, those three functions, cybersecurity, auditing the banking system, and monetary policy, are assumed by the banking network under the control of the central bank. So, how much energy does Bitcoin mining consume each year? Every human activity requires energy to be performed. The questions we can ask ourselves are, what's the point? Is it beneficial for humanity? How significant is the contribution of greenhouse gas to the energy mix used in Bitcoin mining? Additionally, what's the trend in this energy mix? According to a paper written by Michael Kazaka, a consultant in the traditional and crypto payment industry, the energy consumption of Bitcoin is approximately 100 terawatt-hours per year, varying with the level of activity on the mining network, which primarily depends on the price of Bitcoin. Often, the media tries to compare the energy consumption of Bitcoin with the electric consumption of a country. And it's true that some countries like Finland consume around 80 terawatt-hours per year. But you have to understand why drawing such a comparison is fallacious. The two are simply not comparable. First thing, a household or a company needs a specific kind of electricity. They need dispatchable energy. This means you want energy whenever you need it. You don't want to wait for the wind to start blowing to get your train going. Mainly, fossil fuels, hydro, and nuclear energies are dispatchable. To put it simply, you have an on-off button to manage the production. But many renewable energies like solar and wind are not dispatchable because we don't know how to store electricity efficiently, so we refer to them as intermittent energy. Secondly, an electrical network or grid must always maintain a specific balance between production and consumption, and the always is very important. Otherwise, it will shut down, as was the case in Texas in the winter of 2021. As you can see, the operating margin of the grid is approximately 1%. So your grid operator is constantly monitoring the grid to balance the supply and demand with dispatchable energy. And that's one of many reasons why Texas has among the cheapest electricity in the USA today. Since February in 2021, when the grid operator ERCOT had to put 4 million people into a blackout, Texas was the first state to understand that Bitcoin miners are ideal consumers, and since then, they fully support and integrate Bitcoin miners into the electrical grid with specific programs that are referred to as demand response programs. The idea is simple. Miners operate according to the demand of households and companies on the network. Their production provides a response to the demand on the grid. That's exactly what we're doing in Texas with my company Data Factory. We already operate 10 megawatts in Missouri, Oregon, and Texas. This video is our Missouri farm. Earlier this year, we also raised $25 million to set up 2 plants for a total amount of 40 megawatts close to Austin in Texas by the end of 2024. To give you an idea, it's the equivalent of the consumption of 40,000 people. So, what are demand response programs all about? We'll take the example of our farm in San Antonio, Texas, which operates on the Texan grid. We have a contract with the grid operator, ERCOT, to shut down our plant when the grid needs it within 5 minutes. By absorbing the excess production of capacity, energy producers earn more money without any additional investment because Bitcoin miners are using the excess capacity. At the end of the day, Bitcoin mining on the Texan grid allows global prices of electricity to decrease for the Texan population. Hold on to your hats, ladies and gents, and let's take a breath. I'll explain what I just said, and in order to do that, I need to take energy transition into consideration. On a classical grid, you balance production and consumption with dispatchable energy like hydroelectric power plants or fossil-fueled plants. Things become touchy for your grid operator when the energy transition is always asking for more intermittent and renewable energy. This production has to be consumed in priority because we don't know how to store it well. That'll lead to building more and more gas and oil plants to absorb the volatility of those intermittent energy sources. Let's imagine that it's the same problem when you need to drive a bus every day, but you only need that bus during rush hour when the commuters need it most. That's why, in many electrical grids, prices are rising. More gas-generated electrical energy plants have to be built to keep up with demand, and at other times of the day, a large portion of the electrical capacity is heavily underemployed, and this underemployment is what is included in a lot of electricity prices. When you build an electrical grid, it's very capital intensive because it's a fixed cost industry. As you can see, the peak production capacity to guarantee you will be able to make your dinner each day between 6 and 8 p.m. is only functioning 10% of the time. But you have the same phenomenon between seasons. For each electrical grid, you have to draw a profile of consumption with 3 different power capacities depending on 3 different kinds of loads. The base load capacity is the most massive investment when considering nuclear reactors, or it is the most volatile when taking into account wind and solar energy. The intermediate load is linked to fully dispatchable energy, and the third category is the peak load. Most often, the peak load uses the oldest means of dispatchable production linked to gas and fossil fuels. And now that you understand all this, it's become crystal clear why the mining industry is not in competition with households and companies' consumption. Bitcoin mining aims to find the cheapest energy in order to operate. Miners negotiate all the unused energy. We call that overcapacity, and there's a lot of it. The point is, miners have zero problem if they need to shut their plant down when there is too much demand from households and companies. The miners can't compete with the higher prices. Remember, they need the cheapest electricity to operate. We're talking about 6 or 7 cents a kilowatt. In other states in the US, you are paying more likely 16 cents per kilowatt. Why is that? It's because Bitcoin miners operate when the average consumer or company doesn't. They are fully flexible and dispatchable. That's why we keep saying that Bitcoin miners are the ideal consumer for a power grid. This is a really crucial point. In peak periods, you're using the oldest and least efficient power plants because you need them for only a really small amount of time. So you don't want to invest in brand new power plants that would be used only 10% of the year. That's why baseload electricity is the cheapest. Then, you have the intermediate load, which is more expensive. And finally, the peak demand for electricity is somewhat unaffordable. But if you make a demand response program like in Texas with Data Factory and other miners, you can suppress the oldest production power plant that allows ERCOT, the operator, to save a lot of money. When you need that power in peak times, ERCOT simply needs to compensate Bitcoin miners in order to have them shut down their plants. Using this process, you stop using the most carbon-intensive power plants with nothing else. And you save a lot of money. That's the magic of on-grid Bitcoin mining, but that's not all. We can make projections in an ideal world where we're looking to maximize mining benefits on the grid. In an ideal world where Bitcoin miners are everywhere and in the quantity you need, you would only have baseload factors like hydro, nuclear, solar, and wind energy that would be running 100% of the time. The volatility of renewable energy is rejected on the top of the baseload and absorbed by Bitcoin miners who adjust their production to it. This is why my company Data Factory is paid in Texas. When we shut down our Bitcoin mining plant, ERCOT pays us, but even with that, they already save themselves and the Texan population a lot of money. We can already see that Bitcoin mining helps solar and wind energy growth in the Texan grid. In this ideal scenario, Texas and other states that would follow suit would end up having the cheapest energy per unit because every factor of production has an efficiency close to 100%. And moreover, as the dispatchability of your production isn't a critical factor anymore, you can use a lot more solar and wind energy at a very good price per unit. To refer to our bus analogy, it's like the bus is always filled with Bitcoin miners to operate at 100% no matter what time of day. Because of that, the ticket price for regular passengers becomes way cheaper. But for now, the demand response program in Texas is still an exception in the world. Although there is another case where Bitcoin mining is useful, that's in off-grid mining. Okay, so Bitcoin mining helps to optimize an electrical grid, but what happens with greenhouse gas emissions? To put it differently, do we emit more CO2 when we optimize the load rate on the grid? Is Bitcoin mining green, or at least getting greener with time? Let's start with the conclusion of the KPMG report entitled Bitcoin's Role in the ESG Imperative. Bitcoin helps to stabilize energy grids, reduce greenhouse gas emission, and may help with the transition to renewable energy. Okay, let's dig in. So the Bitcoin mining industry consumes about 100 terawatts per year, remember? Well, what's about its energy mix? Keep in mind this industry is young and it's still not fully mature. But now you understand the trend is becoming greener and greener because intermittent energy is the cheapest. We can easily understand why the energy mix of Bitcoin is decarbonating fast. The mix of energy used in Bitcoin mining entirely depends on the mix of electricity you're using. So to understand what the Bitcoin energy mix is, you need to know the location of the Bitcoin mining plants all over the world. And then, once you have this information, you also need to understand what kind of contracts they have with electricity producers, as they might have specific agreements to help balance the grid using various energy sources. So it's a very legitimate question, but getting the answer is not that easy. Alright, so what kind of information can we find out about the Bitcoin mining energy mix then? The best guess we have today comes from Jamie Coutts at Bloomberg. This chart shows us so many interesting things. The blue line is the global CO2 equivalent emissions of the Bitcoin mining network. From 2019 up to today, its greenhouse gas emissions have been pretty much the same, around 40 megatons. But you have to pay attention to the white line, which represents the total network hash power. This computational power has been basically multiplied by 5. It means that the CO2 equivalent in emissions of each hash was divided by 5, and that is huge. But you have to take into account a factor that explains the decreasing CO2 equivalent per hash. First, the energy mix, of course. As you can see on this chart, sustainable energy in the mining network mix increased from 35% in 2019 to more than 50% today. But we have to consider the fact that it's also thanks to efficiency gains of the ASICs machines used in mining. From 2019 to 2023, ASICs are able to perform the same amount of hash while using 63% less energy. So when you combine efficiency gains and a greener energy mix, you obtain this amazing blue curve. If you compare the progression of sustainable energy at stake in the Bitcoin energy mix with the evolution of any developed country mix, Bitcoin is really fulfilling its energy transition while our developed countries are not. So, according to the work done by Bloomberg, we can make this statement. Bitcoin is getting greener and greener over time, and sustainable energy in the Bitcoin mining mix is above 50%. You see? Bitcoin is a must-have ESG investment because it's evolving quickly and becoming more useful and greener. To sum it up, Bitcoin miners are found everywhere where there is energy that humanity doesn't know how to use properly. It may seem incredible because today a lot of people think energy has to be saved, but in fact always keep in mind that energy consumption is directly linked to economic growth. From a different point of view, we have to save energy, but we need to develop sustainable energy production everywhere we can. The Bitcoin mining industry is helping to make it profitable, and remember, without profit, nothing is sustainable. Once again, you need to put things in motion. 10 years ago, when young people were mining at home in the center of New York in their parents' basement, of course it strained the grid. It was just blunt energy consumption in the wrong place and at the wrong time. But it's nothing compared to the kind of plant we're building in Texas. Our plant will be a participant of the demand response program set up by ERCOT, the operator of the Texan grid. In this case, it goes without saying that Bitcoin mining won't put a strain on the grid. In fact, it's the opposite. Our plant will help to balance the grid, and ERCOT will benefit from that. In general, Bitcoin mining in Texas is already helping sustainable energy development, as you can see on this chart. Wind and solar went from 20% to 34% in no time. That being said, there are also two kinds of off-grid mining I want to speak to you about now: gas flaring mining and overcapacity mining. So what is gas flaring exactly? It's the combustion of natural gas that is released when there is bio-waste decomposition. We can find methane emission within farm exploitation, waste fermentation, or even when forests get old and riddled with rotten wood. In the best case, industrial ones, these gases are burned because if they aren't, they emit methane into the atmosphere. Methane is a gas which is 21 times more detrimental for the climate than carbon dioxide when we analyze its impact on global warming over a 100-year period. Venting this natural gas directly into the atmosphere is a strictly prohibited practice in most countries. Producers must, at a minimum, burn it to transform the gas mixture into carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and water. Why don't producers sell this gas instead of burning it? Unfortunately, oil producers face significant challenges in capturing, storing, transporting, and distributing this gas to an eventual market. Most of the time, given the relatively small amount of gas available compared to the cost of infrastructure to sell it, typically it is simply not economically feasible. And it's easier and, more importantly, more economical to flare this valuable natural resource regardless of the waste. Is flaring an effective way of eliminating methane? In theory, when the infrastructure is well designed and conditions are optimal, it is estimated that over 99% of the gas is properly burned. However, over time, production and throughput decrease. The pressure in the flares drops, and the flame is affected more by environmental conditions such as strong winds. This can significantly alter the efficiency of the combustion, which means that more of the natural gas is released directly into the atmosphere. With current global operating and maintenance practices and regulations, the International Energy Agency, IEA, estimates that the average overall efficiency of flaring operations worldwide is approximately 90%. The 10% loss may seem low, but as methane is 21 times more dangerous than CO2, an inefficiency of 10% is equivalent to multiplying the environmental impact by a factor of 3. That leads to an enormous negative impact on the environment. Finally, we have to take into account that this average of 90% covers a huge variance between sites. The sites with the lowest efficiency are only able to eliminate 50% of the methane with flaring. That is why you often see those pillars of flames on all those offshore oil rigs. It's not just for show. You also need to take into account that flaring operations can have an impact on the local population. The concept of nighttime no longer exists in some places. It's like having a spotlight on your window 24/7. In a nutshell, for these environmental and social reasons, countries and international organizations, including the World Bank, launched the ZRF initiative in 2015. The objective is to totally eradicate venting and flaring of natural gas by the end of the decade, and eventually reach the goal of zero emissions by 2050 and avoid global warming of more than 2 degrees Celsius. Unfortunately, these beautiful initiatives have not been followed by any concrete action, or in some cases only marginally, as is often the case in ecological matters for more than 30 years. You can read more about it. If you see the blue bar on the graph, you can see the evolution of gas flaring worldwide for more than 10 years. At best, we can say that the situation is stable with no significant reduction despite any efforts to do so. Some critics even say that the recent decline is solely due to the COVID crisis and the downturn in human activity, and the volume is expected to start to rise again in 2022. The chart shows where we are now and the goal itself. We're off to a pretty bad start to meet it, and it's clearly not going fast enough given the climate emergency. Moreover, the figures published by all these international organizations, such as the World Bank or the IEA, are clearly below the actual amount of methane emitted. Numerous studies and articles suggest that the amount of methane emitted into the atmosphere from oil activities is at least twice as much as what is found in these official reports. With Bitcoin mining, it's very different. It doesn't matter what you have in terms of total power at your disposal. 10 megawatts, 100 megawatts, or even 1,000 megawatts, which would correspond to a large nuclear reactor. The market can absorb all new entrants of all sizes without any limit. There will never be a time when the mining industry will be saturated and new Bitcoin mining operations are rejected or can't find a market. On the other hand, of course, it is becoming more and more competitive as the miners share a fixed size cake. However, there is no cronyism or corruption. Everyone plays by the same rules, and everyone can expect to get a share of the profits generated by this industry. There are currently 450 Bitcoins distributed every day to miners around the world to reward them for their participation in securing the network. While there are also transaction fees, these are currently a marginal part of their revenue. In the last year, the mining industry generated over $15 billion. Now, how does this connect with flaring? The miners propose to valorize this gas instead of flaring it, or worse, instead of releasing it directly into the atmosphere, as we still see too often on some oil platforms. This gas can be used to produce electricity through local generators and thus power containers filled with ASICs. Since the process of converting natural gas into electricity is much more efficient than simple flaring, the operation is extremely beneficial for the environment. The flaring problems that we talked about before don't occur when used locally for electricity, and it's in the economic interest for the producers as long as the electricity can be used. The company Crusoe, for example, has developed a patented system that would reduce methane emissions into the atmosphere by up to 98% when mining Bitcoin. So, in addition to recovering natural gas, you reduce the environmental impact of the extraction site. I honestly don't see how we could do better in methane elimination. This is it for gas flaring mining. Now let's speak about off-grid overcapacity mining. With my other company, CleanSat Mining, we sell Bitcoin mining machines and operate them with our partner all over the world, USA, Sweden, Paraguay, and Congo. Let's concentrate on the Congo case. We literally have 2 megawatts in the jungle in the National Virunga Park. Business is different here. Thanks to Emmanuel de Merode, the park director, Virunga Energy built a run-of-the-river hydroelectric plant. Of course, and it's the same thing for every hydroelectric plant, you build them for a century. As it's impossible to grow the size of those kind of infrastructure each year, you largely oversize those construction. Starting off, you may have a need of 2 megawatts, but you built 30 megawatts in preparation for the future. Now, you're getting the point. Every big hydroelectric project creates, by its very nature, a large amount of overcapacity which needs years and often decades to be fully employed. Really large fixed costs and small production. Now you're beginning to understand that Bitcoin mining is totally suited in those cases. We are really proud of this plant because Virunga Park is really important for the world. Virunga National Park is Africa's most biodiverse protected area, home to over 1,000 species of mammal, bird, reptile, and amphibian, as well as 1/3 of the world's endangered mountain gorillas. Located on the eastern edge of the Congo Basin, the world's second-largest tropical rainforest, Virunga has become known as the Park of Fire and Ice for its diverse habitats ranging from the Rwenzori Peaks to savanna and volcanic plains. This country is at war, and the park is defended by brave rangers. They are not soldiers, but guardians of biodiversity. When I read the GreenPeace USA report, it really saddened me, because Emmanuel de Merode already explained that Bitcoin mining has literally saved the financial aspect of Virunga Park. Since its war, there is no more tourism in this park. Bitcoin is a precious income source for Virunga Energy. People died there while protecting the park, but also our operator lost employees in the neighborhood of this farm, and those people don't struggle to pollute or ruin the climate. They work to truly make a better world. Of course, I know that the people at GreenPeace USA who made stupid and fallacious assumptions don't know how much damage they're doing. That's why we wanted to make this video. We want to set things straight. A better understanding of Bitcoin mining will actually make the world a better place. And yes, we will speak more in depth in another video about Virunga Park. It's such a special place with such special people. At this point, I hope you better understand how Bitcoin mining can serve multiple purposes. It can optimize grid operations by providing a demand response mechanism. It can assist in the development of green electricity through its preference for renewable energy sources. It can make use of underutilized infrastructure to enhance efficiency, and it can ultimately contribute to the reduction of methane emissions from oil extraction sites through techniques like flaring mitigation. Now that we are clear on that, there are still important questions to answer, such as, why do some people want Bitcoin? Why are they using it? Is there something more than pure speculation? To understand those points, I'll have to explain the point of money and what Bitcoin may add to the international monetary system. That'll be the next topic we'll discuss, so don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in this next video.